Hi and welcome to Tabletop Gaming. My name is Charlie and today we're going to take a look at Harrow County. Now, this is a shiny first look video, so I'm going to give you an idea of some of the lore, some of the points of the game, what you're expected to get from it ahead of it being on Kickstarter, which it may be by now. Check out the link in the description. If we've got one, we will pop it there. This is really exciting. I'm very, very pleased with this coming to us in the format that it has, and I want to talk to you about the cool parts of it so that you can decide if it's one for you as well. Now, Harrow County is a game of gothic conflict, it's how they describe it. I would also say it's sort of like borderline on the horror genre as well, so if that's not something that you're comfortable with or isn't suitable for you, maybe don't go ahead with this. But we're looking at sort of old-timey witchcraft style stuff in sort of 1920s America. It's got some really cool features in this sort of stuff that I go, that's perfect for me, but appreciate it's not for everyone, so just to give you a little disclaimer. Now, importantly, it is Off the Page Games who are bringing this to us. You may know them from Mind MGMT, and it's been very successful. This is based on a comic. So, I personally am not familiar with the comic. However, doing the research to have a look at this, I am now going to purchase the comic because it sounds amazing. This has got some really cool lore with it, which is something that I really want to talk about. So a little differently to most of our first look videos, we will start with that. I will pop some timestamps in the description though, so you can always find out where you need to head to if you want to skip through the lore and just see what the game looks like. Now, first question in lore is, do you know what a haint is? Because I sort of knew it as like a ghostly spirit, and it's sort of specific to an area in America, but it's the idea of sort of haunted, ghostly, scary things that are around, and Harrow County is full of them for a number of reasons. The story of this begins, however, with a murderer witch. The witch in question is called Hester, and she is hung and buried at a certain tree, and shortly after this has happened, after they've murdered the evil witch, a baby appears within the tree. The baby is then taken in by some farmers who raise her as normal, as much as normal is a concept, and they call her Emmy. Now, people are concerned with Emmy. They treat her with some suspicion because what if she is Hester reincarnated? Like, she's another version of this terrifying witch that they've managed to successfully get rid of. But what instead happened is Emmy is so deeply in love with her society, in love with Harrow County and protective of it, that even whilst she's treated a little bit differently, she bands together with other misfits to protect the town, with a couple of supernatural funsies. Now, the conflict here comes from the family. So she and her misfits are known as protectors. The family are the other side. They are the family of Hester, trying to avenge her death by destroying Harrow County, and Emmy and her team are trying not to. That's where this game begins. That's the foundation. That's what you need to know to get jumping right in. And I think that sounds a pretty cool way to go. So let's take a look inside, or at least let's take a look outside first. You'll notice we have this beautiful artwork across here, and we have, strangely, a empty space and another one up here. Does that say to me a roller? Yes, it does. More on that in a moment. But what I will say as we open up for the first time is please be aware that this is a pre-Kickstarter copy, which means there may be some changes. We see things like artwork or box inserts or descriptions. They may change as they go along. Your final retail or Kickstarter product, if it doesn't go to retail, may be slightly different. So you just need to be aware of a couple of potential changes. But let's get inside, shall we? So, this has come to me from another reviewer, so there are some things sort of out of place and not quite as beautiful as we might like, but I couldn't wait to show you, frankly. So, inside here we have our board. So this is going to be keeping track for us of our mason jars, which represent our abilities, and sort of our points abilities are health, progress. Progress is probably a better way of putting it, in terms of points, because your rounds will end after you hit 7 points, so that triggers the ending. And whilst we don't go deep into play when we're taking a first look, we're looking more at things like components and how the game fits together. It is fascinating and so beautifully done how theme matches into the gameplay. So they're mason jars because of the area and because of how well that fits within it and the expectation of what you're going to see. It's a nice way to do it rather than just having a sliding scale or a this is your ability token. It's a little bit more considered, shall we say. So the big thing to know about this game is that it is asymmetric. You have your family and you have your protectors. You're going to play initially as a 1v1 style game. You play against the other person. Protectors are trying to escort people back and save them and not let the village get burnt down, and the family are trying to basically destroy the village as much as possible. And there are of course various ways to do that, various abilities, various upgrades. Something that this game does beautifully well is it teaches you in levels, so in chapters is how they're described. You have chapters 1 through to, I believe, 5. And across those, you start doing a little bit more. So you play your chapter 1, and then you move on to your chapter 2, which has a couple more complexities in, a couple of different characters, a couple of extra bits that you can do, and then you start doing further in chapter 3, more in chapter 4. Then you hit chapter 5, right? So I said this is a 1v1 game. It is. But once everybody's played that and understands the core tenets, add in a third player, and that third player isn't revealed until chapter 5. Spoiler alert, it's Hester herself, which is such cool, like, not even theming, but like plot line, and how cool to add her in, and how powerful she is, and how balanced, oddly, she is, whilst all playing very asymmetrical. It's very cool. But the reason I went down that route first is to show you some of the cards that you're going to see as you go through. So not all of these are immediately available to you when you begin, but will do as part of chapters increasing. Now there's lots that each of them have. They have very unique abilities, very unique things that you can do with each one of them that will change how you play. And frankly, quite often we see these where they're like, oh, it's totally different, loads of different abilities, and they're basically the same one but slightly twisted. Completely different on these. It's a real difference in character each time. Now, as we carry on through, I'll show you just some sort of standard set tokens, but just look at the care and detail that go into these. How very, very cool. But with those, we have the first of our kind, so which are our family and our protectors. But look at those creepy little faces. How very cool those are. Now, something that I am obsessed with as a mechanic that I think is so cleverly done is when you look at these, you'll see they're just quite nicely done, and as we keep spinning round, you'll notice there's a little bit of a gap in the ear there. Now, it's really easy to ignore because it looks just like sort of tooling. It looks like how that generally happens when they're made. That's what you expect to see. But to give you an idea on how clever that game is, you can play 4 chapters perfectly fine as they are without even noticing the fact that there's a slight hole where the ear goes. Once you reach chapter 5 with Hester, who is obviously the original witch that buries herself into your brain using snakes and serpents, is you have those serpents to do that with, and they fit. She says, putting it the right way around. Ah, no, not that way around, this way around. Into the ear. Which means she can manipulate and use those because she's manipulating. Just such a simple little thing that is incredibly effective and such a cool way of using the plot and the way things work into a physical manifestation on the board. And I love this because I haven't even read the comics, but it feels very much like there's a real ode to the practicalities of it, and the gamification doesn't feel like they've gone, ah, cool, here's something easy. They've gone, right, how do we make this match? How do we bring as much of this into that we can? It's not shoehorned, it's where it should be, and I love that. Now, as we're taking over more and more spaces, I'll show you a little bit more of what the board looks like when we can actually get through the pieces. But as you're taking over different spaces as defenders and you're destroying bits, you're going to have these to marker, and you're going to try and sort of chain those across. Now these are nice and robust, very, very clear that an area has been taken, and that's important when you're trying to destroy the village. You need to prove that you're destroying the village. Now, for sort of player boards themselves, there we have protectors and family. So you have what you're going to be progressing through, what you're going to try and do, and you have different abilities as a result, and you collect those differently depending on whether you're a protector or you're part of the family. It's another way in which that asymmetry works incredibly well. Now we also have Cammy and the aforementioned Hester. So look at those. Look at her for how spooky she is. It's just like casually spooky. And then obviously Hester being a little bit more obviously spooky. She also gets fire, which is really cool. You can see the little fire tokens there, so she can start burning down the village, because why not? Now, we keep going. We have more of these, so these can also be taken over. These are our little purple guys. They too have that little marker in them that allows them to be taken over by Hester at the appropriate chapter. We have numerous tokens, so many different style of tokens in there. That, though, I will show you very quickly, is the mason jar that we mentioned. So that gives us an idea of abilities, and those flip over to allow you different things. And again, those abilities change whether you're defending or whether you're family, or a defender or a family, you know what I mean. Now, I've just about reached the board, but I'm going to just show you what those some of the sort of what you're doing on each turn tokens are. So some can upgrade, some of these are randomly assigned, it all depends on what you're doing, but it's things like moving, spawning and strengthening. So we've punched out the ones we've needed and sort of left the other ones in there, but there are plenty to get you going. Board wise, this is a small part of what board we have here. This is board 1, and you'll place different things on there. Now, not gonna lie, I look at this automatically and feel very Catan based. Obviously it's a little bit more sort of aggressive and a little bit more spooky than our current version of Catan, where we're just like, hey, got sheep. But we have further iterations of those as well. But that hexagonal sort of styling that we have obviously fits very well with the additional pieces that will go onto there as well. Very cleverly done. Now, if that weren't enough, because I showed you earlier some of the extra stuff you can find, there are more of those. Meeple-wise, we're looking at these little guys and these ones. So obviously these look a little more people-like, but I mean, who even are people when there's this much sort of goings on and spooky town occurring? And whilst we have got more tokens which match up with those so that they can appear on the board, there's just a couple of last things I want to show you that I think give you a really cool idea of how this game plays. First of all, when I talk about abilities running slightly differently, it is the case that the family pull from this bag, which means they are less likely to be able to sort of upgrade their abilities in that sense, but they don't know what they'll get, but they might get more. So it balances it in sort of volume over strength, which is quite a cool way of not knowing how your game is going to progress, having to act quite quickly on it, and also meaning that each game is very, very different because you can do different things each time. And speaking of upgrades, we have various different cards that offer us things like that. So we have our upgrades, we have cards for tactics, we have cards for Hester herself, and finally for the goblins. And each of those are suitably spooky. So we see we've got blood money. Now, one thing I've not commented on yet is the art style. I love it. I think this is such a cool way of representing something that feels not just limited to board game. It's not standard board game art. I don't know how close it is to the comics, having not read those, but I like that there's a really consistent and really vivid style that works really well with the theme as well. I just think it looks really cool. I think it plays in really nicely, and I think it's very thoughtfully and considerately done. And speaking of considerately done, here's something that I absolutely love and I think is amazing. So we are using the box as part of our gameplay as well, and the way we're going to do this is I mentioned that sort of hole at the top and our box here, and we have a tray here. So this will sit below. You'll have that as a sort of dice tower in that sense, and your combat will take place. You get a point for combat, by the way. Combat will take place based on cubes that you input. Now, you can change the cubes and increase your number of cubes using things like abilities, but it is the case that you'll pop these through. Depending on where they land and how many manage to make the journey out, depends on who succeeds, and that succession then offers you the options for points. And so where does that leave us? That leaves us with a game coming to Kickstarter that I am so excited about. I think this builds on a really rich story, admittedly in a genre that I really enjoy. I love that kind of sort of gothic-y, horror-y, witchcraft style stuff. The sort of spooky things lurking that you don't really know what they are. The solo, I'm gonna protect the world kind of thing. I love that sort of stuff. This appeals beautifully to me. As a game, I think it also does, because you're looking at a very asymmetrical game, can go up to 3 players once you're used to it, but built in chapters to increase your knowledge, so it's not too much of a lore dump. This could very easily, with the amount of components, with the amount of characters, it could very easily be too much, and instead it's been broken down into a way that you feel like you're learning each time. Each time you want to play again and you want to go, right, I'm going to carry on as a defender, but I'm going to try and do this next time. I'm going to prioritise combat next time. I'm going to prioritise this next time. And you keep playing until you find that style, but because your game is changing over your first couple of plays, you're also willing to try different things. Then you play with different options, and there's so much to it without feeling overwhelming, and I think that's something they've done really impeccably well. Now this is of course on Kickstarter, or will be on Kickstarter. I will pop a link in the description for you, be sure to check that out. I do hope you enjoyed this video, because I'm excited about this and I hope that's come across. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the description. Are you going to back this? Have you played this? Because it has been available at sort of a couple of conventions, you've been able to have a go at it. What are your thoughts on it? What do you think after this video, as to whether you'd back, whether you would recommend this to others? I'd love to know. As always, I leave you by saying thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a really great day, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon.